am passionate about helping leaders evolve and helping teams address dysfunction so that they can effectively work together, and just helping organizations develop their people so that the organization can achieve its strategic objectives, because if the organization is thriving, then hopefully the people are thriving.
How much leadership does intersect with money? A lot more than people realize, from like the practical aspect of like, you have your leaders who ultimately kind of help control the pay, right, of their people, right? And rule number one, at least in my space, is don't mess with people's money, man. Like, you start messing with it, like, you're gonna have some big time problems with any of your employees, right? And then also you leading your own self, right? Like, you being the leader of your own financial house, right? Even if you have a partner in that aspect, or if it's you by yourself, it's just so important, right, to lean in and to understand how money and leadership sort of intersect. Because I found, at least being a leader myself, I've led teams of like really small, like one or two. I've led really large teams, corporate teams, you know, lots of dynamics when it comes to being a leader. Also the size team you have, the kind of industry you're in. Are they here locally? Are they international? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many different aspects to it, but money ends up being like something that's super important. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Financial Mastery Simplified. I am your host, Jacqueline or Jax Crider. Today we have Miss Tess. She is a expert in like leadership space, you know, kind of helping leaders become who they are. And so we're super excited to have her on. So welcome to the show. Tess, tell us a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and why you're excited to be on the show today.
So Jax, thank you. I am super excited. First of all, because I love your energy. So my name is Tess Fyalka, and I'm a leadership development coach and a corporate trainer and an author. And I recently released my first book. That implies that there's going to be a second. We'll see.
There will be. It's addicting. I went on to write my first one. I have my second one coming out next month, so I get it.
Oh, that's right. Yes, that's right. You do have another one coming out, but yeah. So you know how much work they are, and what a commitment they are. But yes, I've been working in the leadership development space for many years, for about 2 decades, and I am passionate about helping leaders evolve and helping teams address dysfunction so that they can effectively work together, and just helping organizations develop their people so that the organization can achieve its strategic objectives, because if the organization is thriving, then hopefully the people are thriving.
Yeah, for sure. No, and I love that. And it's so interesting, you know, as people, you know, either ask or I find alignment with people and they come on the podcast as guests. It's funny because I get the comment a lot like, oh, well, you know, I don't work in financial space. Like, I can't come on your podcast or whatever. But there's so much like overlay, right, between all of these different things, like leadership in particular. You and I were talking briefly before we kind of started this conversation, you know, and went live on, you know, how much leadership does intersect with money. I mean, a lot more than people realize, from like the practical aspect of like, you have your leaders who ultimately kind of help control the pay, right, of their people, right? And rule number one, at least in my space, is don't mess with people's money, man. Like, you start messing with it, like, you're gonna have some big time problems with any of your employees, right? And then also you leading your own self, right? Like, you being the leader of your own financial house, right? Even if you have a partner in that aspect, or if it's you by yourself, it's just so important, right, to lean in and to understand how money and leadership sort of intersect. Because I found, at least being a leader myself, right, I've led, just to kind of give you some perspective for those of you who don't know my professional background, I've led teams of like really small, like one or two. I've led really large teams, corporate teams. So at one point I was area sales manager for Pentagon Federal Credit Union. I had about 12, 15 people, something like that, underneath me on my team of salespeople. And so, you know, lots of dynamics when it comes to being a leader, and also the size team you have, the kind of industry you're in, right? Are they here locally? Are they international? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many different like aspects to it, but money ends up being like something that's super important.
Yes, all of the layers and all of the nuances that are part of being a leader, and even just leading yourself. And you alluded to this, and then also the fact that it doesn't really matter what your position is, if you will, in an organization. you're a leader regardless, because you might be leading a project, or you might be leading, some initiative or a task force, or perhaps you've just been placed in charge of something, and all of a sudden, yeah, you're a leader. And the fact of the matter is that everybody is a leader, and so the that it's in your actions and your interactions, and how are you showing up as a leader and communicating the message of what you value, what's important to you. And and then similarly, like, yeah, as you were saying, we were talking before the show started, that you have to lead yourself in the decisions that you make and how you're going to show up for others. And then, similarly, you have to choose to lead how you are going to make decisions about your finances, and how do you want to lead your life, if you will. And that, obviously goes beyond the workplace, and, or I suppose intersects with the workplace.
For sure. Well, and I mean, it's very interesting to me that as I have gotten older, definitely, like, I've always been somebody who's good at math, and of course that's one of my number one complaints I hear is like, well, Jax, I can't be good with money because I'm not good at math, which is not true. It's so many resources, so many different tools at your disposal. You don't have to necessarily be good at math to be able to calculate. But the thing that I think is super interesting about money, more so than most people give credit for, is the soft skills that come behind. And a lot of that has to do with like awareness, right? Like understanding, like you said, being able to communicate to others like where you are, what your value set is, etc. Because a lot of times I think when we get out into the real world, right, when we step out of our parents' house or wherever we have been, prior to, turning 18 and becoming an adult, and, the whole world apparently is just supposed to fall in our lap and we're supposed to have it all figured out. I think instead, what people focus on is like the mechanics, right? So like, okay, I need to make money, so I have to have a job, right? I need to do these things or whatever, but they're not taking any time to step back and becoming the leader in their own life, the leader in their workplace, the leader in their home, wherever it is that they are leading, and asking themselves like, okay, so first of all, what is my value set? Like, do I know what I stand for? Do I know how much money I desire to make, right? And this obviously changes per season as growth comes. And so it's interesting because I think so often we focus only on, it's like we want every thing to be into a box, right? And so money, like, it's in this very logical box, and the logical box says that that money is just mechanics. It's like, how does it work? How does it operate? How do you spend it? How do you save it or whatever, which is important. Don't understand it. Like, I mean, you have to know that. But what about the other parts, right? Which is where I feel like the leadership aspect really comes into play, is those pieces.
Well, and you hit on two really key points. One is mindset. And so what's the leadership mindset? And the other is awareness, and self-awareness in leadership. And if the mindset, like you said, it is that money is transactional, when in fact it is not just transactional. There's a lot of emotion surrounding it, and
Lots.
similarly, yeah, and like with leadership, it's not just telling people what to do. In fact, it's not telling people what to do. That was very much the 21st century model of leadership, the command and control, or rather the 20th century model of leadership. 21st century model of leadership is much more collaborative. And if my mindset going in is curiosity and learning, and how am I developing my people, and how am I developing myself, and similarly, I think, tying back to how am I learning about what's my mindset around money, and how am I continuing to learn about what are the resources that are available in terms of how am I using my money, how am I investing my money. And speaking about it, investing, one of the most important things that I advocate, of course, because of being in my space, is investing in yourself, investing in your professional development, in your leadership development. And then also, that would tie to how are you an informed consumer in the financial market. Those are, you can find better words than I can find, but just that mindset of learning, and that mindset of growing, and that, finances aren't just a transactional experience. They're very emotional, and leadership is a very emotional experience. Especially well at for new leaders, for existing leaders, and they're facing all kinds of challenges. And in our world today, we can be facing any number of financial challenges.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, it's interesting that you talk about the emotional aspect of money. So, the flagship coaching piece that I created, which is called Financial Instincts Framework, is a lot about that. It's a lot about understanding like what your natural bent is as far as like financials go, right? Like what's your natural instincts, and then like how do we unpack a lot of this other emotional stuff that like we're tying with money. And the thing that I'm going to say for anybody who's listening to this podcast who is in your younger years, I'm going to tell you something. You're going to believe that one day you're just going to grow out of imposter syndrome, and you're just going to just feel great about every place that you've been, and that it's never going to creep in. And it's not true, because I've coached people from super young to older, or as old as my parents, right? When it comes to the money space. And what you find is that it never totally goes away, right? You just come into better awareness, and you come into better ability to kind of quiet it, if you will, right? And just know that like it's going to bubble up, it's going to kind of come up inside of you. And like, how do we manage that? How do we, kind of contain it? Keep it in a good space so that it doesn't destroy like all the things we've built, and like what kind of mental wherewithal have we created within ourselves, right, to be able to push past it. And so if you're believing like, oh, one day I'm just going to grow out of it, unfortunately, I wish I could tell you you would, but you won't. It does get a little quieter, I can tell you that part. So that part is good, but otherwise no. And you were talking about curiosity. It's funny. So my second book, the first book was very mortgage centric, like what I do for a living, really trying to help people understand how it works, Mortgage 101, the secret sauce to home buying, just really trying to give good information to people so they can make good choices and understanding how my space works and operates. But the second book is actually called Ask the Question, and it's about the power of intellectual curiosity. And because I firmly believe that this is a superpower, that you have the ability to lead yourself, lead your team, lead whoever it is, if you are not scared to ask questions, right? I mean, this is how you learn anything in life. If you literally look back when kids are in pure consciousness from like the age of like newborn to 7, you actually see it play out in real life. And somehow, and I think it may have been some of, unfortunately, the 20th century leadership, the like, I'm just going to tell you what to do mentality that kind of has killed some of this off. And so I'm actually super excited to see, as leadership has transformed, that it is more collaborative. We are looking for more people's opinion. We are trying to foster a sense of awareness, right? Not just with money, but with anything that we are doing in life. And I think we're going to start seeing as a society a lot more great gains out of this, not just financially, but otherwise as well, because we're not afraid to start stepping in to that awareness, which thank goodness. Can I just say?
Yes. Well, around the whole concept of curiosity. So in my book, I have an entire chapter that is dedicated to curiosity as queen, king, and everything in between. And
I love that.
So the idea of your 3 best friends are the words "I don't know," but there is so much fear that is attached to saying "I don't know."
Absolutely.
But yet, when you say "I don't know," and I'm going to find out, I'm going to be curious, I'm going to ask questions, like the world can open up for you. And what for leaders, the message that sends to the team members, in that, you know what, it's okay not to know. It's not okay though not to be curious.
Correct.
But when you can say "I don't know," because how can you? You cannot possibly know everything, and it's insulting to the smart people that you've surrounded yourself with. And when you can tap into the collective intelligence that's around the room, you are so much more capable of together coming up with a solution that addresses not the simple problems that our world and our organizations are facing today, but the complex and the multifaceted problems that there. It's not an either or. It's not a yes or no. It's not a win or lose. It's a, what are the different elements and the different nuances and the different aspects of this issue or challenge that we are facing as a team, as an organization, that if we can be a little bit more curious and look at it from different perspectives, and ask the different questions. Things like, okay, if this is tremendously successful, this initiative, 6 months from now, what will we look back and say, we made sure that we did this to prepare? And if this initiative is a total failure, 6 months from now, when we look back, what will we wish that we had done? And it's that slowing down, it is a cliche, but I'll use it anyways, slowing down to speed up, and really considering the challenges that we're facing from multiple perspectives.
For sure. Well, and wow, I mean, how valuable that is, right? I mean, first of all, I agree with you. I think fear plays huge into this. Especially now that we have what I talk about a fair bit on the podcast, which is the highlight reel. So part of the reason we fear that we don't know is because it seems from our vantage point on social media and things like this, that everybody has it all together. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, just so we're clear, and part of the reason I talk about my own financial struggles on occasion on the podcast is because I need people to hear and understand that what you see on the outside is not always what's going on the inside, right? Like those separate aspects. And so a lot of times you cannot be afraid to say, I don't know, right? In your job, in your life, in your finances or whatever. I mean, the whole thing is, if you're not going to be curious, I mean, we live in a time where you can get more access to information than you've ever had, right? More access to experts in your field, more ability to really understand and have a knowing. But you're right, you do have to slow down. And I think that's the other excellent point that you made, is that so oftentimes we are pressured because as a society, especially American society, we run so fast all the time, right? We constantly on this treadmill and Tess, you got to do this, and Jax, you got to do that, and you're just running like this, right? And so forcing yourself to slow down and take a moment is really, really hard, but it is super, super necessary. And I'm going to paint this as an example, my own story. So for those of you who are not aware, mortgage is my main job, right? This is like where I make the vast majority of my income, etc. I have obviously other streams, but this is like the main one. And working in mortgage started slowing down in about 2022, 2023, right? We saw a massive lull. And to give you some perspective from a numbers aspect, the last time we saw this few amount of mortgages per person was in the 80s. And to give you some perspective on how different, like how much worse 2025 technically was than even in the 80s, the amount of people who did, it was like one mortgage was done per every like 12 people or something like that in the 80s, roughly. In 2025, it was one for every 20. So almost double as bad. Okay. So now put yourself in my shoes, right? I work in the financial space, and what most people in my industry were doing at this moment was panicking, right? They are trying to sell themselves short. They're either trying to bail out, whatever. Some people luckily had other streams of income, so maybe they weren't as panicked. But yeah, I mean, a lot. And so I decided, as opposed to panicking, which is, of course, what naturally I kind of sort of wanted to do, was like, oh my gosh, my whole industry is melting down. Like, what do I do? I decided to step back and start asking myself questions, right? Like, why do I do this to begin with? Like, why am I here? Why do I even like mortgage, right? And my answer was, I genuinely like helping people financially succeed. And owning a home tends to be usually one of the largest wealth differentiators for people. And that allows me to be a part of their overall financial wealth health, right? Like this is a big aspect to that, right? And so I just start asking myself questions and saying, okay, how do I expand that? And some of the answers were this podcast, right? Like helping people come into awareness in and of themselves. Some of the answers were creating different kind of courses and resources that help touch people that maybe have no interest or not to a level where they want to buy a house yet, like whatever that looks like, right? And so sometimes, like you said, you have to slow down to kind of speed up, and also not only just to speed up, but to figure out what is a fit. And if you don't force yourself to do it financially, at some point, you're probably going to be forced. You're going to hit a wall, either because your company lays you off, you have some kind of major health issue that you run into, right? Like there are so many different things that can kind of force it. So my encouragement is, before you get forced, try to step back and ask yourself, okay, how do I slow down? And when I slow down, what is that telling me? Like, what can I glean from this? It's going to better my future. And then overall, my finances. Because I'm a firm believer that if you're doing what you love and you're passionate about it and you're going about it the right way, the money will come. Whatever kind of money you personally need to make your life sustain, it finds its way. But if you don't do the slowing down, it's never going to find its way.
Stay tuned. We'll be back right after this message from our sponsors.
Welcome to Financial Mastery Simplified, your go-to podcast for making smart money decisions. We break down complex financial topics into easy-to-understand advice you can use every day. Our experts cover everything from budgeting and saving to investing and retirement planning. We give you the tools to take control of your money and build the future you want. With Financial Mastery Simplified, you'll feel informed and empowered to make the best choices for your financial health. Tune in to Financial Mastery Simplified on your favorite podcast platform. Start your journey to financial confidence today.
Visit us at fms.tips and fms.college for more information.
Welcome to House U, where we believe in the power of education. At House U, we're more than just a brand. We're your partner in home ownership, dedicated to educating, equipping, and empowering you every step of the way. Education is at the heart of everything we do. We offer comprehensive resources designed to make home ownership simple and accessible for all. From understanding mortgage options to mastering home maintenance, House U provides the knowledge you need to make informed decisions with confidence. We host workshops and seminars, bringing together experts and community members to share insights and build a stronger, more informed community. Because when you're educated, you're empowered. House U, home ownership made simple for all. Visit our website or contact us today to start your journey with House U. Empower yourself with knowledge and embrace the joy of home ownership.
Thanks for your patience. Now back to our conversation.
Yeah, and I think to your point, Jax, there are a couple threads I want to pull out there. Number one, life happens, and stuff happens, and the thing, and I talk about this in the last chapter of the book, and it's the knowing when it's time to say goodbye, and because the job changes. The company changes. The great boss is no longer the great boss. There's been a restructuring, or it's just like, okay, I've done this for 10 years. It's no longer fulfilling. What's the next iteration? And I think it's that not holding on so tightly to this is the way things have to be. I'm sorry,
Absolutely.
but the universe is going to first the universe is going to start tapping you on the shoulder and going, things aren't quite adding up, but because we're so wedded to things have to be this way, and I got to hold on to this, and I'm secure and I'm safe, and then, but then things continue to change because we're constantly in a state of change. And then, and then the universe is like, well, wait a minute, things are really not adding up. And it's kind of like, you're getting the message that I need to make a change in my life, but still we resist. And then, there is, and it I think it happens to all of us at some point along the way. It's like the universe just shoves you off the ledge and says, it's time for you to grow. It's time for you to move in another direction, and forces us to let go and, step off the ledge. And we don't know if that stepping off, if it's going to be a 10-inch drop or 100 feet. So, but, I'm not saying that it's easy, but, to your point, it's like life is going to be life. So how are you open to the changes that are going to be coming your way, because they will be coming your way, the hard stuff and the great stuff, and that it's the being open to what might be possible if I can not hold on so tightly to things always have to be this way, or I have to always have it figured out, or I've always got to have the answers, or I've always got to be in this job, or I've got to be working my way up here. How am I also creating space for what do I really want? What do I really want to create in this one life that I've been given, and what might I experiment with that is going to help me to grow and to develop as a person, as a professional, as a friend, a colleague, a mother, a sister, a brother, so on and so forth.
No, and I love that. And it's very interesting. You were talking a lot about change, and I agree with you. I think we're either going to get forced into it, right? Or we can choose to embrace it and choose to be okay with the uncomfortable, because change is uncomfortable, right? I mean, especially if you've done something a certain way for forever, you know what I mean? Like it's uncomfortable. But I think that especially with the onset of how much AI is changing, it's going to even be more rapid in the next 5 to 10 years than it ever has been in our entire lifetimes. Now is the time to start embracing it and seeing how it propels you forward, as opposed to being the bus that runs you over. Because I think there is so much talk. So I'm friends with a lot of people that are really heavy and deep in the AI space. A lot of them in the last week have posted this little thing that talks about when these job functions are going to die, so to speak. Okay. So they're like drivers, 2031 or whatever it is. I think maybe it was 2029 or something. I don't know, whatever. Right. And they're saying, because we have autonomous driving vehicles, like this is eventually going to go away, whatever. Right. And then they're talking about even like doctors and lawyers and all these things. And I think this incites a lot of this fear inside everybody. And I totally get it. And it's totally normal to have some fear surrounding some of these things, especially financial fear, because basically if we're talking about stripping you of potentially your livelihood, right, then this means that money becomes a much larger concern, because now I'm in, competition with all these other people. Am I going to be able to, get the job and all these different things? But I think if people really will see some of the changes and kind of see and lean into some of the positive and come at it from a curious perspective and aspect. I mean, I say all the time that AI is really an amplifier, right? It is the ability to lean in and it is going, I mean, they've already talked about how it's going to make more billionaires than we can imagine. I mean, there's already a woman who's in her 20s. It has literally made a billionaire, right? And so I think a lot of times we have to lean into the change. And I'm not saying you have to agree with it. I'm not saying you have to love AI or be its best friend. That's not what I'm suggesting here. But what I am suggesting is don't be afraid to be curious, and especially how it intersects with the leadership in your own life, the leadership of your teams, right? How it's shaping and changing the industry that you work in, or whatever it is that, right, that drives your life. Because the truth is that the change is going to come for you, whether you like it or not. And like you said, you can either get tapped on the shoulder or you can just get shoved off the cliff. I prefer to be tapped on the shoulder and pay attention than be shoved off the cliff. I don't do real well with shoving. I don't know about you.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. Yeah. There's so much there. And back to the idea, of fear and uncertainty, and it is sort of Mother Nature's kind of cruel joke in that we're in this constant state of change. I mean, you and I are going to be changed after this conversation.
Absolutely.
And we're in a constant state of change, but yet our brains are so wired for certainty, but yet we are in a constant state of uncertainty. But the other thing though is that we are always at choice. And so, to your point, we can choose to be, cower in a corner and go, oh my God, AI is coming after me. Well, or we can get curious and say, where's the opportunity here? How do I grow? What might I be looking toward rather than running away from? What can I be running toward rather than running away? And, and it comes back to mindset. And how do you want to live your life? Do you want to live your life in fear? And holding on very tightly to, things can't change. Well, I'm sorry, but they are going to change, and they are changing. Or do you want to say, change is here. How am I going to roll with it?
And honestly, I mean, it is hard. I mean, and there are still choices other ways. Like, I mean, there's people right now who live completely off grid, right? They have cashed in a lot of different things, and they basically live a very minimalist lifestyle. You know what I mean? And so, like, I'm not saying that you can't move into whatever financial life you want to look at and live. I just think that there is a lot of conversations. Like, I don't know if you saw, I think the company is called Block. It's the guy who used to own Twitter is who it is, right? And then Twitter bought, Elon Musk bought Twitter from him. And then he has this company called Block. And I think from my understanding, it is the parent company of Square. So that system that like, you tap, you like a lot of small business owners own them, and it's how you can pay them and things like that or whatever. They just laid off I think it's something like 10,000 people off their staff. They cut their staff by over 50%. I want to say they had about 16,000. They kept 6 and they laid off 10,000. And so these are the crazy fear mongering headlines, of course, that are hitting. And of course, they're not looking at the full picture, because if you remember when Elon Musk took over Twitter, he laid off a ton of people as well. And the reason why is because he felt like there was a lot of bloat. There was like too much employees for like what was needed for like the job functionality, etc. This guy is basically saying it's in response to AI. He's implementing a lot of AI aspects and things like that. And I do think we're going to see more and more of that, right? Which is why it is essential that not only from a financial perspective, but from a leadership perspective of your life, of where you're at, you need to have an understanding of not only your value, but like what drives you, where you want to be. Because I'm sorry, as much as you feel like that 9 to 5 is certain, it's not. Just like it's not certain if you're self-employed or you're fill in the blank, right? Like nothing in this life is guaranteed, literally nothing. And so I think that's another place we often do is we put ourselves in a false sense of security. It's funny because so my dad, we had this conversation one day because in my space, we move around a lot. It's very common. So like we don't sit and stay at a company for like 20 years. We're like here and there and whatever, all these different things. And part of it is just because of how our industry changes. We're very heavy change-based industry. And then number 2, it's because if you're in the sales space, we're 100% full commission. So if they start jacking with your pay, you and I were having the conversation, don't mess with people's money. Well, guess what? They start messing with your money, you're going to find somewhere else to go. And my dad and I were having this conversation and I was telling him, well, unfortunately, there is not some of the loyalty anymore to corporations because of some of these large changes and things like that. And so I find that it's incredibly important for people to understand that you can't necessarily bank as much as that may be your aim. And maybe it does. And maybe it works out that way, right? Maybe you get to retire the place that you started working. But reality says that most people, most the general public, that's not going to be the case, right? And so you do have to do a lot of inner work. You were talking about, investing in yourself, investing, monetarily, probably also time-wise and things like that, like into your own self and how important that is. And I think that right now it's probably more important than ever because it is going to start affecting out as a lot of these different changes come more rapidly towards you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you hit on an important point, about loyalty, and you need to be loyal to yourself. Because you are responsible for you. Nobody else is responsible for you.
And there we go. That's a mic drop right there. Exactly. I agree. And I think it's interesting too. I will say this as we kind of are wrapping up this conversation. I think that as a society for a while, we got away from that, right? That the loyalty should be to us and that the buck kind of stops with us or whatever, because it blows my mind how few people understand how truly, truly powerful you are. Right? As a human being, like, and you're going to say, well, Jax, you don't know me personally. You don't know, where I come from or my intelligence level or my education level or whatever. It doesn't matter. Strip all that away. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your education level is. I don't care any of that. Trash it all. You are powerful beyond measure. When a human brain can literally convince the body that it's pregnant and actually show legitimately signs of pregnancy, that will tell you how powerful your brain is. And I don't care how smart, not smart, whatever you're going to tell me that you are or not. It doesn't matter, right? And so this is where like the buck stops with you and the loyalty has to lie with you. You have to understand, because if you don't, guess what? You're going to let everybody else control that noise.
Yeah. Who's going to write your story? Are you going to write your story, or is everybody else going to write your story?
And honestly, the whole reason that this podcast exists is because I see in my space all the time people outsourcing their power. Largest debt you will probably ever hold in your entire life. And they go to the mortgage person. And as opposed to a good mortgage person who asks questions, who's trying to figure out what it is you actually want and how we make this happen for you and putting together the pieces, they just say, here, Mr. and Mrs. Mortgage person, whatever you think. And I'm like, no. I'm like, you should be asking questions. I want you to ask me questions. I want you to say, this payment doesn't feel comfortable, or I don't like this, or whatever. Now, I may have to tell you, this is what we have to, this is the reality, and this is the only thing we can make work based on these factors. But it doesn't matter. Like, you should be in control. right? And anybody who's telling you there's only one right way, you shouldn't be listening to them.
Yeah, brings us almost full circle back to curiosity and being mindful of what are the questions that I need to ask. And it's the other thing that it comes to mind for me around the fear. It's like, oh, well, are they not asking questions because they fear that they're going to look foolish, or that they should just trust this person because they're the expert, and how often, speaking, to, giving our power away, are we just blindly relying on, oh, someone is supposed to be the expert, rather than getting curious and asking questions?
For sure. I was gonna say, any really good expert, you know this, they're not going to be afraid to answer your questions, right? They're not going to be afraid to explain to you whatever it is you want to know, right? Because the choice has always relied and been with you, right? Like,
Yeah.
as it should be. Because again, the loyalty is to you. And man, I like that. I think I'm going to use that from here on out. I'm like, the loyalty is with you, because it does. I mean, they're your decisions. It's your life. And I can't just encourage people enough, to live it. I know, as we're kind of wrapping up this conversation, so you have written a book, which is amazing. And I know that sort of what you are offering the audience is sort of in relationship to the book. So tell us a little bit about that, because I mean, I think that's another thing, I think, that you really opened my eyes. And I never really thought about it from this lens or this perspective, that yes, I mean, we are the leaders of our own life. I thought about that perspective, but we are even a leader at our job, right? Like, we don't know like who's looking up to us, or, we're leading this project or this conversation, right? Like, we're a call center person and we're leading a conversation. I mean, we are always in a leadership place. So again, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, this is also not applicable to me, I'm not a leader. No, you are, right? To Tess's point, you are a leader. And so you need to be listening to this conversation. So tell us what you have, to offer and how they can get in contact with you. Because clearly it feels like everybody needs to read your book now.
I think that's a great idea, Jax. So the name of my book is Walking the Leadership Ledge, The New Leader's Guide to Building Resilience and Confidence at Every Step. And when I said new leader, that's in parentheses, because we are indeed new leaders at multiple times in our careers and in our lives. But you can learn more about my book on the book website, which is Walking the Leadership Ledge. I also, if you click on the link, when you go to the website, it'll take you to a quickie little 2-minute quiz, and where it's a new leader reality check. It'll take literally 2 minutes, and you'll get a customized report based on the answers to your questions. And then also, if you sign up to receive my newsletter, then you will get a free chapter of my book, and it's my absolute favorite chapter in my book, which is chapter 5.
Awesome.
So yeah, and I've got a couple new programs. I've got a Soul and Science of Leadership for Women program that's going to be launched later this year, and then I have my Leadership Accelerator program, which is another cohort that I'll be launching also later in the spring. So you can find out all about those things. Yes,
I love that. Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I mean, so important. I'll tell you, for forever, because I luckily am an incredibly smart person. I didn't really invest in myself. I was like, oh, I probably have a lot of it, figured out, or I invested in myself in very traditional means. Like, I went to law school and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And when I really started leaning in and, getting coaching, reading more high level books that really could expand me out or whatever, I mean, it made such a difference, not only in like the way that I lead like my teams, right? But also in just the way that you lead your own life. Because you start realizing that, hey, the book stops with you, and how do we, lean into the uncomfortable, and how do we do those things? And so definitely, you guys, connect with Tess, and thank you so much for being a part of our podcast. I'm so appreciative of your time, your expertise, and hopefully this episode was helpful for you, and we will see you on the next episode of Financial Mastery Simplified.
Thanks, Jax.